Welcome to Easy Rightsizing on KFOR. When it comes to your personal belongings, what do you save? What do you give away to charity? What do you sell? But more importantly, what do you hand down to your children or other members of your family? Janine Bryant of Changing Spaces SRS is all over that today. On Sunday mornings, we tap into Janine's experience for Easy Rightsizing. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning, Dale.
You've been busy, not only with your business, Changing Spaces SRS, but you're working on your family history.
Yes, my husband and I both had an interesting experience recently. I don't know if you've ever done this, Dale, or if any of our listeners have experience with this, but 23andMe, they have those genetic kits that you can buy, and the process is really interesting. This is not a sponsored ad, but they send you a box, and then I think you have to spit into a vial, and you send it in, and then they send you back this big, long report, and it's pretty interesting. And, I've grown up knowing quite a bit about my family tree because my dad is a big history buff, and he grew up, with a lot of knowledge and interest in both sides of his family tree. And also he had a lot of interest in my mom's side of the family too. And so even though my mom's passed away, we grew up learning a lot about our family tree. My husband, not so much. He did not grow up in a house like that, and he didn't know a lot about his extended family. Of course, he remembered all of his grandparents, but beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge there. So this process just kind of got me thinking. It got us down this road of exploring our family tree and thinking about creating a family tree for our kids so that they will know about and remember, generations who have gone before them. I think that's important. And what we discovered, what I discovered about myself and certainly about my husband was interesting, and I thought it might be interesting to talk about with our listeners today. And that is this. It's pretty easy for most of us to name all four of our grandparents, right? We all have four grandparents, and some of us have more than four grandparents. That's only if everyone stays married. If there's remarriages and stuff, then there's step grandparents and what have you. But most of us can name four of our grandparents. But if you go back just one generation, it multiplies pretty quickly. So one generation back, you have four grandparents, but you have 8 great-grandparents. And Dale, can you name all 8 of your great-grandparents?
No, I can remember I met one of my great-grandparents, my great-grandmother. I can name my grandfather's father, and that's it.
Okay,
so
two of the 8. All right, Dale, I think you are very typical because same thing with me. Like I said, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on my family tree, but off of the top of my head, without consulting any reference materials or anything, I could easily name 2 of them because those were the 2 that I grew up hearing stories about. But boy, the other 6, I had to really think about for a while and maybe consult some family history books that I have at home. And then I could finally come up with those names. But my husband, boy, off the top of his head, he had no clue. He couldn't name a single one of his 8 great-grandparents. And it was only after some discussions with his mother and his sister that we were able to name a few more of them. But even after we did some digging and, looking through some other family history books that we had, I think we were able to come up with like 5 of the 8 of the names of his great-grandparents because his father has passed away. And so, that side of the family gets a little bit lost, after you lose some of those people in your life. So all of this really, it got me thinking about my own descendants. And boy, it's a sobering thought because if I think about how I don't remember my great-grandparents, it made me realize that, of course, all of us will one day be forgotten. And this experience made me realize that that day is coming sooner than maybe we would like. Okay, so listen to this, Dale. All of my great-grandparents, I'm 38 years old, confession time. I was born in 1981. So all of my great-grandparents were born during the 1880s and 1890s. All right, my parents and my grandparents were both older when they had me. So my parents are older than a lot of folks my age. My great-grandparents, born in the 1880s and 1890s. The last one of my great-grandparents passed away in 1964. Long before I was born. So I never met any of my great-grandparents. But that's 50, now it's only 55 to 65 years since all of my great-grandparents have passed away, and I can barely remember their names. That is a sobering thought, I tell you. And like I said, I don't think I'm an anomaly. I think that is very typical. And so I would challenge our readers to think about that. You know, how many of your great-grandparents do you remember? And, you know, how long has it been since they've passed away? And I think that gives us an interesting perspective on what our connection to our descendants will be, you know, when we look at our connection to our ancestors. I think it's easy to remain fairly connected to our great-grandparents as long as our parents are alive, because, of course, our great-grandparents are our parents' grandparents, and they probably remember their grandparents. But once our parents start passing away, it becomes a lot harder for us to remember our great-grandparents. And so they can no longer share stories with us about them. And after our parents are gone, it becomes really a lot easier to forget that entire generation. That's just really, if you think about it, it's just 3 branches above us on the family tree. So what does this have to do with stuff? Okay, when we think about our stuff and passing down our stuff, listeners of this program will know that I often say, people over stuff, right? People are more important than stuff. And that stuff is not necessarily attached to memories or love or family connection. And I think it's interesting that when we think about our possessions, and sometimes when we get to a point in our lives, we feel so connected to our possessions. And I've worked with a lot of clients like this, where we just want to grab hold of our stuff and hang on tight because we feel like it's a part of us and it's part of our identity, and it helps us feel like we're in control if we can hold on to our stuff. But just to have that perspective that even a few decades after we are gone, none of that stuff is really going to matter all that much. And when you think about passing things down to your children or your grandchildren, there are certainly things that your children will want of yours after you are gone, and there are probably things that your grandchildren will want of yours after you are gone. But your great-grandchildren, I don't know, Dale. Are they going to want any of your stuff, your great-grandkids?
I really don't think so.
No.
At the age that I am and the age of my granddaughters and grandsons, to move them into a getting married age and having kids age,
right.
I'd move along too at that pace.
Yes.
Probably not.
Right.
Janine.
You know, some of us will be alive to meet our great-grandchildren and some of us won't. But I think that the chance of them cherishing any of our stuff 3 generations from now is very little. And when I think back on my own family heirlooms that I have, again, I think that I probably have more attachment to my family than most people. I have probably 10 or 15 items, actually, that belong to great-grandparents in my home, okay? Because my mother was an only child and she's passed away, so a lot of that stuff comes to me, and I just have one brother, and he's, quite frankly, not all that interested in the stuff, so I tend to be the family historian. But even I have about 15 items that belong to my great-grandparents, and when I think about my children, who are 6 and 9, how likely are they to think about keeping those things when they're adults? And can you blame them? You know, they never met these people, and, you know, they never met, because then for my children, these are their great-grandparents. So I think it's a healthy perspective. It's a humbling perspective to have, but it's a healthy one because it helps us realign our focus to the here and now and to focus on people over stuff, because ultimately in the big picture of things, our stuff just doesn't matter that much.
No. I have several of my father's shop class projects.
Okay,
when
yes.
he was in high school.
Yep.
Pretty good woodworker.
Yep.
And I wish that I would have talked to my son more about my father. He was very close to my wife's father.
Okay, yep.
More so than my dad. And so both are gone. And to him, he would rather have my mother's father's
Sure.
mementos than mine. It's not that he doesn't want mine, but there isn't that connection that we talk about every Sunday.
Yep, because though that connection comes from stories, it either comes from experiences and memories if he spent time with him, or it comes from stories from you. But you know what, Dale, there is still time. You can still, try to share some of those memories and stories and pass down some of your dad's things that he made in shop class. But then when you think about your grandchildren, how likely are they going to want to keep those things? You know, I think that the connection gets a lot looser with each generation.
It fades.
And that's, you know, some people might say, boy, that's sad and that's wrong. But I don't think it is wrong. I think it's just natural. We can't live in a museum and we can't remember. There's only so many generations back that you can remember, right? I mean, if you think about your great grandparents, you have no connection to those people. And that is just how the world is. Time marches on, and we just have to kind of accept that. And again, pull us back into a healthy perspective when it comes to our stuff and our relationships and our memories. And then it helps us realize that we need to focus on the here and now and the present and the relationships that we have with the people who are here now.
And some of the people we're talking about become your clients.
Absolutely.
And have these items. How do you sit down and have that conversation? We just have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
An unfair question in a short amount of time.
Well, I do. Sometimes I try to turn the tables on them, and I try to ask them, you know, what about your grandparents' items or your great-grandparents' items or something? Or something that's really effective is your in-laws. Would you want your in-laws' stuff? And so then it helps them realize why their daughter-in-law, for instance, is not particularly interested in their stuff. Because everyone, I think, can relate to that when they think about their ancestors. But then when you think about your descendants coming after you, you think, well, my stuff's going to be more important, you know, and it's not necessarily true.
Janine has a number of resources for you. EasyRightsizing.com for tips, videos, and resources. You can always go to Facebook and Instagram. New online auctions are coming up. ChangingSpacesSRS.com/auctions.
That's right.
Nice to get back to some normalcy, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And
you can
have
find our auctions and our estate sales if you just go to our website, ChangingSpacesSRS.com.
And every Sunday, we're here, Sunday morning for Easy Rightsizing. Join us on KFOR. Have a good weekend, Janine.
Thanks, you too, Dale.